I talk in English with Alexander den Heijer from Amsterdam.
Yes.
Thanks for coming over here. I found you on Instagram. You are a big thing on Instagram. How come?
Wow, I don't know, man. I just started expressing my thoughts about 3 years ago, and people seemed to like it, so they started sharing it, and before I knew it, the things I wrote appeared everywhere.
Yeah.
And people started following me more and more, and I felt more pressure, like, oh, I need to write more and more.
Yeah.
So that's how it all started, yeah.
And are those quotes you pick up from books, or are those quotes who just come up and pop up in you?
Often they just pop up.
Yeah?
Because I'm always like deeply involved in things, and then I think about them, and then in my unconscious things start working, and then they just pop up as quotes. And then I just use, and that's what I do with Instagram always, I use the caption to explain them, or either to give a certain context to it, so people can understand it better. But they often just pop up. Sometimes I'm just on my bicycle, or I'm just walking, or I'm sitting on a bench in the park, and I start thinking, I'm like, yeah, that's one, I should write that one down.
So what's the power of a good quote? What does it do with a man's brain?
Oh, that's interesting. I think that's, you have to ask the people who are...
what does it do with you when you read a great quote by one of the great philosophers? Or
when it's something that really resonates, it feels like I remember something that I always knew. It's almost like as if something becomes clear. It unveils something that you've always known. I think that's it. And it also depends a lot on timing. Because often the time a quote really hits me when it comes at the exact right timing. I'm just in a transformation, or something happens, and then boom,
there it is.
And like, this is the right timing. So then the timing and the words, the meaning of the words together kind of can be mind-blowing in a way.
Yeah. So
it's really interesting. It's just words, and to see what it does to people, it's very interesting.
Could you say that a quote that you wrote a year ago doesn't have that much value then anymore for you, because it's past, it's gone, it's not the right moment anymore?
Well, sometimes I can, when my insights become better and I start seeing things more clearly, I think I do a lot. I see my quotes from like 2 or 3 years ago, and like, oh my God, did I really think that? It's not necessarily true in a way that I see the way I see it now, but I still do remember that I exactly felt like that moment. So it was still valuable at that moment, and that's a bit the trick always. Because I was writing my book, I was just sharing everything. I was bundling all the things that I've written, and I was like, should I add this or shouldn't I add this? Because I'm not really feeling it right now anymore. Yeah. But then again, I thought, yeah, but there are many people who are at the process right now that may find some benefit from it or whatever. Yeah. So I decided to just share them anyway.
Yeah. And the book is out now. Nothing you don't already know. That implies that it's really true what you just said. It's just pointing to something that's already inside of you.
Exactly, yeah.
So no new knowledge.
Exactly, yeah. Well, it's a bit of a double meaning, because a triple meaning, I would almost say. There's nothing you don't already know, because it's just my Instagram page in a book form. So those who follow me, there's nothing new for them. Yeah. One level deeper, all the things, it's the same with cliches, you know. We know they're true, but sometimes we forget why they were true. And so many of the things can be seen as, it's cliche, it's true. A lot of people read it and say, it's true. So it's not something you don't already know. But on a much deeper level, you can maybe even see, and I think Plato thought this, is that there is nothing you don't already know. Because everything that you learn about yourself that is profound feels as if you remember something that you've always known.
Yeah. It's like an aha
moment. And that's this aha moment, indeed, yes. And then the Buddhists think, that's because you've lived many lives before. So all the experiences you've already experienced in lives before, so that's their way of conceptualizing it. And but I don't know how to conceptualize it myself. I just know the experience of finding something that feels like rather than unveiling something, it's as if you unveil something rather than you find something new. Yeah. So that's why I use that title.
Yeah. Let's get to know the person Alexander den Heijer a little bit more, for people who are interested in you. How was your childhood? How was Alexander at age of 5?
That's a very long time ago.
28 years ago.
I think I was first of all, I was this kid that always wanted to understand things. So I was this kid that always asked people like, why? Very annoying, I would say. Until the internet was there, so I could then ask Google instead of people, so there I was less annoying.
Okay.
But anyway, I had this weird connection with reality, because I was a very dreamy kid. I could spend weekends playing with Lego and create my own world. But at the same time, I was also really, let's say, a popular kid who had lots of friends. So I was also really well connected. But there was always this split between my inner world and the reality, let's say. And the reality, a lot of things that I just had to do. I had to go to school. I had to find a job. All these things I wasn't really interested in. And I was really interested in understanding myself, the psyche and the inner world. But I never thought that you could study in that field as well. Because then I thought, then I study psychology, so I have to become a psychologist. But I don't want to become a psychologist, so I didn't study psychology. That was my way of thinking at the moment. And I remember that, I just did some studies that were not really interesting to me, but just because I had to do them. And I think that's really what characterizes me as a kid. This two separate worlds, of the inner world, the way I thought and my dreams, and then the outer world, like all these weird things that I should do. And then when I became like 25, 26, those worlds met and they become one, and then I started flourishing again in a way. But yeah, as a child I also had because I was so dreamy, I always had a lot of depressions as well, quite some strong depressions. And I think that also gave me a certain depth to understand my own pain and my own suffering a lot. Gave me also a better understanding of myself and other people's suffering. And I think that's also very valuable for what I do now.
So no big event in your youth that triggered that depression?
No,
father
really
that deceased? Or
No. Yeah, just like every normal kid, there are always events, things you don't like.
But there was a lot of confusion, if I understand you right, or not?
Yeah, there was quite some confusion in a way that I was always... Well, let's say I used to be very easily depressed when I was young, until I found out that all these depressions had one thing in common. I always wanted life to be different than what it was. And until I learned that, life is just what it is. It's my thoughts or my way of wanting the world to be. That's wrong. And then I started working on myself. And that was like 2 years ago that I really got that understanding. And then I started taking responsibility and kind of, take back all the responsibility for my own life that I've lost somewhere. And then, take your place in the world.
So you were blaming the system, the school?
Blaming, yeah. I was like that. I think a lot of young kids are like that. If you look at the world right now, a lot of people are protesting against capitalism. They're protesting against everything that you can protest about. But and I used to be like that as well. I had also this like resentment a little bit in a way, until I realized. Because sometimes I really felt like, oh my God, I'm in hell. But then I realized, no, hell is in me. And then I started working. And the funny thing is, when you start realizing that you are responsible and not anyone else for the way you feel, then you can take back this responsibility. But at the same time, you can also kind of grow from the inside out, and then you can be happy in a way, even if the world around you is not as happy.
Yeah. Sounds like a very mature way of seeing things.
I think definitely. I think I'm 33, so it's probably just maturing in a way, And
puberty is gone.
Yeah, it's like this. It's almost like the Lion King. You're like Simba. That's with Timon and Pumbaa. Just no worry, be happy. What is it? Hakuna Matata.
Yeah.
Don't take any responsibility. Just be happy, and And then you go. Simba becomes mature when he realizes he is the king and needs to save the kingdom. And that's where he becomes mature. It's where he takes responsibility. And I think most of it is just that, in a way.
Did you ever get a diagnosis in your childhood? Let's say you have those terms like HSP in Holland. If you are highly sensitive, highly intelligent, ADHD, anything people thought you could have?
Yeah, they thought many things. And I did a lot of tests.
Yeah.
But no, nothing really stood out.
No.
at HSP, I did some tests, and it was like, then you do 40 questions, and then if you ask 20, or you answer 20 with yes, you're highly sensitive, and I think I answered 39 with yes, so probably I'm highly sensitive. But at the same time, what does that mean, you know?
Yeah. People know you from your great quotes on Instagram and Facebook and so on. I got some quotes. If you like it, we could take some quotes.
Yeah, definitely. Let's go.
Yeah, and reflect on that. First one I read in the category Leadership and Business. When a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower. Is that where we always focus on the end product instead of the soil?
Exactly, yeah. Well, it was this is again an example of one that just popped up. Because what happened, I used to, as a trainer at that time for a corporate business, I used to go on a lot of teams. And then we had to work with the manager to make the teams better. And a lot of times what I've heard the manager say is like, all my people need to change. Because they didn't do this better, they didn't do this well. And there was once a manager who constantly tried to replace his people who were not motivated enough. And to get in new motivated people, but within no time the motivated people also lose their motivation. Yeah. And I was thinking about that problem because I was really emotionally engaged with that. And I was walking in the Vondelpark and I was just looking at the flower. And I was like, yeah, you know, when the flower doesn't bloom, you just give it water, you make sure the soil is right, you take care of the conditions so that the flower can flourish or bloom again. And all of a sudden, when I thought about that, I understood the problem, because this person was focusing on fixing the people rather than on creating a proper environment, which and as a leader, that environment starts with you. You are the environment, because they're exposed to your way of leadership all the time. And if you are, let's say, demotivating them, of course they're not motivated, because that's the problem. We always want to motivate people. But often, if you go deeper, they have to just stop demotivating the people. And that's what I learned, so I just wrote that down. And it's interesting, because I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with that one, because I posted it and I think it went viral. Like millions of people shared it.
Because we recognize something in this. Everybody has been in this situation where people, also in relationships, people want to change you, but the circumstances stay the same.
Yeah.
In a workplace, again. Let's take some from personal growth and effectiveness. Champions don't show up to get everything they want. They show up to give everything they have. When did that pop up? During the Olympics?
It was a bit... I'm not sure. I think Gandhi said something like, true satisfaction lies not in the attainment, it lies in the effort. And I thought about that a long time, because when I was a kid, I always wanted things. You know, I wanted to finish school. So I was always thinking about the end. I want to get something. I want to get the diploma.
Yeah.
And until I realized, you know, when I graduated, I was like king of the mountain for 2 days, and then 2 days later, I was just a nobody searching for a job. And I was like, wow, that's quite a contrast, you know. Yeah. And so. Then I started thinking about it. It's not about getting everything you want. It's about showing up to give everything you have. And the more you give of yourself, because you can only give of yourself, right? The more you kind of experience this sense of fulfillment that comes with that. And that's how I realized that. And when I looked to sports people, and I think I saw this at the Olympics. I don't remember who it was, but someone won the golden medal. But she didn't feel right, because she didn't give it everything she had. And there was someone else who became second. Yeah. And this person was so happy because they gave everything they have. Yeah. They couldn't do any better. Yeah. And I think that's where we often confuse success with, you know, getting it. But I think success is way more about giving it everything you have. So then you cannot fail, because you've given everything you have.
Yeah. Yeah. Also a great one. Then we have the category life and inspiration. Now, this is, how do you call it, after the one about the champions, the key to a rich life is to enrich people's lives. That's maybe a little bit the same.
Yeah.
I thought this one was interesting. Don't spend your entire life building a ship without ever tasting the salt of the ocean.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, that's an interesting one, because I'm not sure what I mean by that. I just thought
I know. I was thinking about protection.
What do you think about it when you read it?
Protection. I was thinking I can protect myself of everything. I build a great ship that I will never go into the water. But then I stay wondering all my life, what would it be? What would it be like to go into the water? So I thought about protection, about insurance, about
exactly. Yeah,
that's what I.
Well,
thought.
the thing that inspired it was. Because often I meet people and I speak to people and then I reflect on it, and sometimes I just feel something but I can't put it in words, and then it ends up in a metaphor or a quote. But with this one, what happened is I met someone and I recognized a part of myself in this, because this person was constantly focusing on, I need to have a house, I need to have a job, I need to have all the things so I can finally live. But he always put, let's say, he postponed living to a future ideal.
Yeah.
And when he had the house, he was like, no, but I really need this so I can be safe or I can feel right. And this quote kind of came out of that, thinking about that there's something, you can try to find this protection your entire life, or you can search to how do you say that? To create the right conditions so that you may live, but maybe you never live.
Yeah.
If you constantly strive to have the perfect conditions. And that's a bit what I try to say with that. But people interpret it in their own ways, and that's fine, you know. And
that's nice about it. Could you also say it's the same like people who go on a vacation? They think they have vacation the moment they arrive and they sit at the balcony, but the vacation starts, let's say, at the moment you start looking for a great destination and wondering how would it be like there, and to go that way. And okay, let's take one more.
Right.
Fight against what you hate and you will perish. Fight for what you love and you will flourish.
Yeah, that's interesting. I used to be this fighter. I was always against things. And then I realized that it only makes me angry, resentful, bitter. And then I suffer from it. I start withering like a dead flower, you know? Because what happens if you fight against something, because you're really angry at something, all you do is you make the other thing stronger. It's the same with fitness. I go to the gym, I train my biceps. What I actually do, I fight against it until it breaks. So what does it do the next day or 2 days later? It becomes stronger. So that's what I see a lot. And I think, but I'm not sure, I read this story about the USA. Like years ago, they had a lot of coyotes. And they started fighting against the coyotes because the coyotes could kill the babies. They didn't want that, so they started fighting against the coyotes, killing them or with traps and poisoning them. But what happened is these coyotes learned to cooperate better together, and they became smarter and bigger and stronger. So there was once a time they were in 3 states that were coyotes, and then later on they were in like almost all the states. And that's what happens if you fight against something. You're the one who perishes. You know, you're kind of fighting against something. So then I always ask people, but what are you for? If you're fighting for something, what do you want? Because it's very easy to destroy things in a way, but it's way more difficult to build something that you love and to maintain it.
Yeah. What you resist,
and that's kind of
persists, I once read somewhere.
That's what Carl Jung said. Yeah, and that's really true, man. I really experienced that many times in my life. Yeah, definitely.
And let's translate it to people who have cancer. You always say the fight against cancer, but you could say, why not make it like a march for healthiness? Or,
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, it's always against something.
Yeah. Well, I have a friend who is very depressed, and for about like 20 years already. And we were in a library the other day, last week, and I asked him, like, he was looking at books, and I was just reading a book. And it was this calmness, and all of a sudden it was about embracing the things you hate. And it just popped up. I said, are you able to embrace or to love your depression?
Yeah. Byron Katie says it.
And he was like,
Yeah.
And he didn't answer, but I just saw him thinking. I was like, yeah. And then I reflected on myself. You know, can I love the things that I usually hate in myself?
Yeah.
Because then you kind of give up the fight.
Yeah. Don't get rid of things. Replace them then? Or let's say I'm always complaining about all those airplanes who come over here to Schiphol. What's the right way to look at that? Some spiritual teachers tell me, well, you just have to be with the noise. Just, go to the irritation, because the noise is not the problem, it's the irritation. Yeah. It's again that what you said, you want something else that isn't there.
Yeah. Because that's the thing. There are only two problems. Every problem you will ever have in your life, you can categorize them in two problems. There's either something you don't want, or you want something that isn't there. So you don't want the planes, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And you can say you can go to the irritation, but I think, and that's what you learn in Vipassana meditation, which I do a lot, is you have to go even deeper before the translator. Because there's, you sense something with your ears in this way. You sense like the airplane.
Yeah.
Then you interpret it as something that you find unpleasant, an unpleasant feeling. And then you want to get rid of that unpleasant feeling. What you learn with Vipassana is to go deeper, even before the translator. That translated is as unpleasant. Mm-hmm. It's just a sensation. It's nothing else. And to give you an example, I had this last week. I was in the train. I had this great meeting in Rotterdam with the company I work with. And I was just in this calmness, like let's say my Vipassana state of mind. And I was just sitting calmly in the train, and then 4 guys showed up. And they were like making noise. And they almost seemed to enjoy the fact that other people were frustrated about them. And they were just making more noise, and they were laying on the couch and making noise. And my first reaction was annoying. But then again, I was like, no, wait a minute. Let's go back to my breathing. So I just started breathing. And before I knew it, the frustration was no longer frustration. It was just noise. There was sound. Yeah. There was sound, but there was no interpretation anymore. And I think that's also what in my workshops and my talks, where I talk a lot about, that you have to learn to observe without interpreting it.
No meaning. Don't give any meaning.
Just observe it. And a lot of times we talk about letting go, you know, like let things go. But in a way, I'm not such a fan of the word letting go, because that implies that you have to get rid of it, let it go.
Yeah, yeah.
So I prefer to say let it be. Just be with it rather than be involved in it. It's the same what happens if you have a thought. Because what happens is, let's say these people end up in, you see the plane, you know, well, what's the first thought you have?
Annoying.
Annoying, exactly. It's annoying. It's already translated into what it means to you. And what happens if you start if you're being involved in that thought, then the thought gets more power, and before you know, it becomes an emotion, and then the emotion becomes even an act. You start doing something.
Yeah, I'm going to write a blog about it.
Exactly. So, but what you can also do, even before you get involved into the thought, you just let the thought be without getting involved to it, and then you can always remain peaceful.
Just look at it.
Yeah. Just be with it without wishing it to be different than what it was. And that's my greatest lesson in life, man, that allowing life to be what it is, and to just train yourself to see it as it is. And that's what Vipassana means. You know, it literally means seeing things as they are. That's why it's such a powerful meditation technique.
Yeah. Then we maybe come to the I in us, or some people call it the ego. What is that force in us that wants to control things, change things, make it for the better, avoid pain, gain pleasure? Is that a force in us, or is that just imagined?
I wouldn't say it's imagined. I think if you've people who say, I hear people say like fear is just an illusion, but I think they've never been like terrified. Because if you're terrified, you know it's real. You know there's real fear in you. However, you can somehow decide or train to let that fear not take over you, or maybe even to not allow the fear to take you over.
Yeah.
But fear is just a signal, I think. And you know, I'm not a scientist in this case. I'm just thinking from my experience. But to me, fear is like a sign. It tells me something. Like, I need to pay attention to something. And there's many fears. If you talk about the ego, whatever it is, someone made up the word ego that refers to something. But I've never spoken to the person who made up the word, so I can't tell you what he means by that. But what I think it refers to is this like survival mechanism in a way. It's like, and the most urgent survival fear is like, I do not have enough resources, you know, oxygen, food, drinks, whatever. Like, I do not have enough. Then the other one is more like the social security, you know. I am not enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not sexy enough. I'm not competent enough. Because what it does, if you become competent, you feel a sense of security within your group. And then you're like, I feel good, you know, you get a sense of serotonin, you get recognized by people, and you're more secure. So whenever I see this fear just as a signal, like, there's something lacking.
Yeah.
But then, is there really something lacking, or is it in that sense my imagination, or is it really true? So I'm more like exploring, like what is this fear saying to me?
Yeah.
Is it really necessary? I have a good thing I want to share with you about fear.
Go ahead.
But it may take a couple of minutes to because I need to start somewhere. I had a very interesting experience when it comes to fear, because when I did my first Vipassana meditation, was a 10-day silent retreat 1.5 years ago. My theme was fear, like real fear, existential fear. And what happened is it was very synchronistic in a way, because a week before I went to my first 10-day Vipassana, I didn't know that I was in the Vipassana because I was on a waiting list and they didn't email me with the available spot yet. And a week before the Vipassana would start, I was in a leadership program myself, so I was being trained into a certain concept by a very good trainer, Pleun van der Meer. And I don't know what happened, but her way of training kind of triggered an entire transformation within me. And I remember that at the second day of that training, it was in Scheveningen, at the beach, we were having dinner with a group of 12, all participants of the training. And when we walked back, I was walking together with a woman. And there was kind of a chemistry between us. She was kind of an attractive woman, so there was a kind of a chemistry. And I don't know what it was, but we made jokes about it. And then we talked about it, and then I went to bed. I said, you know what, I'm going to bed, and she went to bed. But what happened, I started laying in bed, and I had my first ever, like people call it vivid dream. I didn't know what that was. Yeah, not like a lucid dream, because in a lucid dream you know you're dreaming. Yeah. But it was like, I was convinced I wasn't dreaming. So maybe it's, I don't know the term, but what happened is, I lay in bed, and I closed my eyes, but then all of a sudden I felt as if this woman was still in the room. But I looked, she wasn't there. Yeah. But her presence, I felt it so strongly, and it was on the left. But the funny thing was, I experienced this, let's say, this tension, this like sexual desire, attraction. Yeah. And I even experienced this in my whole body. Now what happened, I wanted to surrender to that feeling, but it felt as if I had to bend over, and if I, at the moment of surrendering, I should fall out of my bed. So I didn't have the courage to do that. So what happened, I went back and I'm not doing it. And then I felt it again very strongly. And I wanted to surrender, and almost at the tipping point of surrendering and like securing yourself, I was like, forget about it. I'm surrendering, you know, and I surrendered to this feeling. And what happened, of course I didn't fall out of my bed because I was just laying. So I fell deeper and deeper in my bed. That's how it felt. And the first 3 seconds was terrifying because falling is terrible. But then I realized there's no floor. And when there's no floor, you're no longer falling. So you're floating on air. Yeah. And all of a sudden I felt like my whole body started like vibrating. Because floating is in a way vibrating. And then this sexual desire switched into like kind of self-love. So my whole area around the heart started opening up and you know, like weird like vibrations everywhere. And then it turned into some divine, I don't know what it was. So my whole head, everything around my head started a sensation, and then my whole body. And it felt as if I was floating above my bed, and I was completely vibrating, my entire body. And there was no sense of fear, nothing. It was just warmth and bliss and whatever. Yeah. And all of a sudden, people started appearing in my... Because I was out of my bed all of a sudden, and I was somewhere, I don't know where exactly. And then people started appearing in front of me. And everyone who saw me was just smiling and peaceful. And it was first like this stressed, like a businessman or whatever. And he saw me and he was calm. And then this little girl, like, I think she was about 16, she came to me and she said, you can't be so happy because the world is stupid. And I started vibrating less. And then she got a grip on me in a way that she felt like I'm having him. So she became more angry. And all of a sudden I realized, wait a minute, I'm in control. And when I realized that, I started vibrating like 10 times harder. And this girl started shaking and smiling, and she was also like, yeah, I don't know, relaxed or whatever. And then I was back on my bed, and all of a sudden I heard all these people call me names. Carl Jung, Abraham Maslow. And I was like, I'm not Carl Jung, I'm not Abraham Maslow. And they said, yeah, look. So I went to the mirror and I saw Carl Jung, I saw Abraham Maslow, and faster I saw all these men, which I don't know the names of. And then I went back to my bed, and then I woke up. And the weirdest thing was that for about 2 days I felt completely calm and relaxed, as if there was no fear. And then, you go back into normal life and you start losing that experience. But the funny thing was, I was in Scheveningen. And the next day I still had this training. I was extremely calm. I went back to Amsterdam at the end of the day. I opened my laptop and I saw a mail from Vipassana, a spot available in Vipassana. I was like, hey, that's interesting. So it's probably the right time. So I went to Vipassana the next week. And what happened is during these 10 days, fear became a very big theme in my meditation. I started experiencing like massive fear. And I realized that I've always been quite afraid. And my response to fear was always avoidance. So I remember that I got, when I was a kid, about 6 or 7, you get a vaccination, and I already ran away when I saw the
needle?
No, not the needle, but the thing they put on, like the jodium, we call it in Dutch.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was not yet the needle, and I was already running away, so my mother had to run after me. And all of a sudden, in this meditation, I could see all my moments. I could relive them. All the moments I felt terrified and I ran away.
Yeah.
I was in a fight, and when I was at school, high school, there was this kid, kind of a criminal kid. And every time he saw me, he did like this. And I was like terrified because I thought he would kill me. And he had already been in prison. I heard that from someone. So I was like,
you stabbed someone?
Exactly, yeah. Something like that. So I was terrified. So I started avoiding places on the school. And all this came back to in my meditation. I was like, wow, there's a lot of fear still in me. But the funny thing was, I felt okay, I have to face it then. So what I did, I used to be terrified in the dark when I was a kid. So I was like, okay, first thing I do, in the morning, 4 o'clock, I go walk into the forest, and in the night I'm going to walk in the forest, on my own, no lights, nothing. So I remember the first time I walked into the forest, it was like 10 at night, it was dark, or 11, I don't know. I couldn't see anything. And it's almost like I was so aware of every noise, like really tension, And then all of a sudden a guy appeared in front of me, like 2 meters. And all of a sudden, the fear that I've felt, that was this existential fear. But it was just another meditator who probably had the same idea,
Yeah.
And so what happened, instead of running away, I just observed it. So I observed, like, oh, this is like being terrified. I had all this energy going to my hands and to my feet. Like, I was ready to run away, man, but I didn't. I just kept there, and I felt my heart beating like massively. The hairs in my back stood up. And just observing it, I felt like, hey, it's going away now. And then I was somewhere further, and I heard a rabbit, probably, or something in the bushes. Boom, it was back again, but less intense. And surely but surely, the fear popped up, and then but less intense, and it somehow was gone. And then what happened at day 7 or 8, I started realizing that what we were doing with meditation is working towards the same point that I've already experienced the week before in that dream. Because at day 7 or 8, I experienced the exact same thing as in my dream. All sensations all over my body, and again, no fear. And the funny thing was that I walked away. I was in the back of the room, like 100 people meditating. I was the last one. So I was always the first one to go out. So I walked out. And there was, again, it felt as if there was no me. There was just activity. And I kind of witnessed myself walking. And then there was a squirrel sitting on the path. And I saw the squirrel before because I think even at day 6 or 5, I had this fight going on in my head, and then I saw 2 squirrels running after each other in the tree. And I was like, hey, they're having the same fight as I have in my head. But now I saw a squirrel on the path, and I was walking towards it. And I think, let's say 30 centimeters in front of me, he was sitting there. And I looked at him, and he looked at me, and he just kept on eating. And I was like, wow, either I'm so calm, so the squirrel thinks, oh, this guy doesn't do anything. It was so weird, and I was just walking there. But the funny thing was that it felt as if this fear was gone. And then a month later, and then I come back to this fear part, something interesting happened. I was at a terrace with a friend of mine, 2 friends, and I heard someone screaming, like really aggressive on the streets. And my first response usually is to avoid it immediately. Avoid danger or aggressive situations. But there was no fear. So this person came right after me. It was a Moroccan dude with a bottle of wine in his hand. He had a tooth, he lost a tooth or whatever. And he was just standing in front of me. He was ready to fight. He said, we're going to fight, man. And I was like, no, man, there's no fight today. There's only love today. And he was a bit like puzzled, looked at me like, what the fuck are you talking about? And I said, I see you, man. And I don't know, but I heard myself say the word maktub. And I've read that somewhere in The Alchemist when I was young. And it was a quote, I think, from the Quran, which means something as "it is written." And I heard myself just say, "Maktub, I see you, man. You're a good person." And immediately he started crying, like loudly. And then he said, "Yeah, I don't want to be a terrorist. People think I'm a terrorist." I said, "But you're not, man. I see you." And there was no fear, nothing. But it was also as if it just happened. There was no me trying to think what to say. It just happened. And all of a sudden, he went from crying to laughing. He hugged me. And I had to repeat something from the Quran, but I can't speak Arabic, so it was fun. He laughed, I laughed, we gave each other a high five. He hugged me again, and then he was like laughing. And then within 5 minutes, he walked away like with a smile on his face. And I was like, what happened just there? You know? But if I look back to it, it feels like a sequence of events that have one meaning to it. It started off with this experience, because I used to be very afraid of those kind of situations. And in that situations, in that kind of moment, there was absolutely no fear. And because there was no fear, there was connection.
Yeah.
I was fully connected to this person, and he probably felt that as well. And that's something, I don't know what happened, but ever since, I'm way less afraid in these kind of situations.
Yeah.
I think that's facing fear. So to come back, it's a long story, but to come back on fear, yeah.
Is there a quote
fear
about
can
fear?
be real.
I know this talk. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Yeah, I think because what happens, it's not that there's no fear, but there was tension in that moment. There was tension, and that tension made me fully focus on that moment.
Yeah.
But then when the fear kicks in, it can kind of get you out of the concentration.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean with you have to keep paying attention, and then fear kind of stays away. Maybe that's how I felt it.
Yeah. Okay, let's look what I wrote down. We have some 10 more minutes left. Yeah. You're also name yourself as a purposologist.
Yeah.
I think purpose is an interesting topic if you think it's interesting too.
Definitely.
We always think you have to have focus, you have to have purpose, but you say you have to have meaning.
Yeah.
Is that the right way of translation?
Can't stand a meaningless life.
You have to have meaning in your life, otherwise...
Well, I think you see it now. I see it in the Western world a lot. A lot of people are suffering from a lack of meaning, and they end up in nihilistic or hedonistic, drinking, partying, whatever. But there's still this emptiness because, and you hear a lot of people saying these days like nothing has meaning, and I think that's so wrong, man. I think everything you do has meaning, and
can you name an example? What is meaningless for you and what has meaning?
I think you can either think as if nothing has meaning or as if everything has meaning. I think that's a bit of the way of conceptualizing it.
Yeah.
And why I use the word purpose, because I was often hired by organizations to talk about purpose-driven leadership. I also help organizations write or articulate their purpose. And because people need a sense of purpose, they need something to aim for. They need orientation. I think even more than a lack of happiness or a lack of love or whatever, I think we lack orientation. Like how to orient myself in the world, what to do with my life. Yeah. That question, I hear so many people come to me like, Alex, what should I do with my life? And once you kind of experience like what that is, then that struggle kind of disappears, and you can't put it in words. It's impossible because it's beyond words. You just do something, you experience like this is something. This is something, and I really had that about 7 years ago when I did my first training. I was asked by my manager at the time, like, do you want to give a training to like a small group of people about what should they do with their lives? Like it was a bit personal branding and stuff, and I never did the training. And so I Googled like, how do you do a training? And what happened is I had a girl in that training, and she didn't know what study to do. It was either HRM or marketing. She doubted between them, but she found out during the workshop that she didn't want either of them, because her father said marketing is something for you, and someone else said you do HRM. But what she wanted to do was designing or acting. She was a very creative person, but what she didn't understand or what she didn't think about was you don't have to become an actress to act. You can also go do acting classes for the sake of acting itself, rather than to become an actor. Yeah. And that made her cry. She started crying instantly, and I was like, why are you crying? I thought I'd do something wrong my first training. And she told me that she had this insight that she never had before. And I was like, that's good, isn't it? Yeah, that's why I'm crying.
Oh.
So she even gave me a hug after the training, and I was like, oh, that's funny. And so I lost sight of her. So what happened after 5 or 6 months? I don't know exactly. I started doing acting classes. So I registered for an acting class, and I went there, and she was there.
As also.
And I said, wow, that's fun to see you here. And she said, yeah, well, actually, because of that workshop, things have changed for me, and I registered for the Heijer Academy, which is a design institute or for studies.
Yeah.
And she said, I'm just going to do acting for the sake of acting because I really enjoy it. So I want to thank you for what you did to me, because it was eye-opening. And that was, I think, first time in years that I experienced something like, wow. Because that was also a profound impact on me, because I felt, wow, what I did mattered to someone.
Yeah, so that's why you became...
And then exactly, and that took a couple of months before I really started understanding what happened. But then I made the conscious decision, I'm going to dedicate my career to training people or to giving teachings and stuff. And that's where it all started. And then, then you have this fire within you, and then things start going way easier than if you do things that you're really not, that do not feel meaningful.
Yeah.
And I think I wrote about that in my book. I think I said, you often feel tired not because you've done too much, but because you've done too little of what sparks a light in you. And that one resonates with a lot of people that are not doing the things that spark a light in them.
So could we translate it as, it's not about becoming, but it's about being?
Well, that's interesting, difficult, because it depends what you mean with becoming, and with maybe there is only such thing as a constant becoming.
Okay, you turn it around.
I don't know. Maybe there's becoming and being, but that's.
Well, I think about becoming. I want to become a great artist, and I can only find fulfillment at the moment that I became a great artist. But it's about just being an artist. And
you mean in that sense? Yeah, then I get it. Yeah, I think. Well, that's exactly what I did. I said to everyone, I'm a public speaker. I didn't give any talk, never. Yeah. I just said to everyone, I'm a public speaker, and all of a sudden, everyone thought that, so they hired me, and I was on a big stage talking to hundreds of people, giving my first talk. It's not that I was not a public speaker. I was it already.
Yeah.
And it's the same with the artist. You are that. All you have to do is to let go of everything that you're not.
Yeah.
And I think that's what self-realization in the end is also a little bit about. It's about letting go of everything that's not you.
It's
so
like the
real you kind of...
The mummy, in Dutch we have the word ontwikkelen.
Exactly.
You take off
the wiggles.
The wiggles,
exactly.
I don't know what the English word is, And then the real you, if you could call it that, comes out.
Yeah, and that's something you can't describe, because every word kind of puts it in a concept, in a frame, and then it's not free anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that's also what I mean with purpose, because that's people often don't understand what purpose is. And I'm not sure if we have another 5 minutes, so I can articulate that. Because purpose is often seen as a goal. I've been in boardrooms, and they were like, our purpose is to be the best customer-centric company in the world. And I said, no, that's a goal. That's not a purpose. And the way to conceptualize purpose, the best way that helped me a lot is, and I've learned this from James Cars. He wrote the book in 86 called Finite and Infinite Games, where he said that there are actually, in game theory, let's say, there are actually two games. There's the finite game and there's the infinite game. In a finite game, there's a goal because there's an end. It's finite. And the goal is most often to win. And to make sure that the goal is the game is finite, you need set rules that are agreed upon up front. So you can't go to the referee at football after 90 minutes and say, come on man, give me 5 more minutes, then I can win.
Yeah.
No, it's agreed upon up front, fixed rules. And that's a finite game, and it's played to win. But there's also an infinite game. And an infinite game doesn't have a goal because there's no end. But it does have a purpose. And the purpose of an infinite game is to continue the play. And therefore an infinite game has flexible rules, because the rules only exist to keep the game in play. And that's what it is with an infinite game. The fun is in the play and not in the attainment. And I think that's what purpose is. Purpose is not something you want to achieve. It's something you keep on doing. It gets you out of bed. It's an expression of the infinite thing. And that's why all the great purpose statements of organizations are expressions of the infinite. And Google, for example, has to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. That's no goal because there's no end. There's always new information. Yeah. It keeps the game in play. And now I ask people, what is life? Is it a finite or an infinite game? And then you have these people who say, it's a finite game because we all die. And then someone else says, yeah, but, the story is not about you. Life continues. So, so are we just finite players within an infinite game? Or are we finite players? But the funny thing when it comes to purpose is that it's more a direction. It's a direction in which you want to live your life, but you're never there. It keeps you, it's about playing. And that's why I use the metaphor that life is not a journey, it's more like a dance. Because a journey has often like a destination where you want to go to. But if you look at dancing, what makes dancing awesome is the dance itself. And the more you dance, the more you start understanding the dance, the more you get into a flow, and the better you become at dancing, and you enjoy it more and more. But what is interesting about dancing is the beautiful, let's say, mix between effort and surrender. You put in effort, you practice, you train, and then you are in the dance, and then all of a sudden you surrender to the dance, and you're in this moment of flow. And I think that's something that goes on all the time, and it's constant striving, but you're never there, you're never finished. That's the infinite game. And then purpose is an expression of that which you want to do every day again, rather than something you want to achieve. And that's what a lot of people have difficulties with understanding.
Great explanation. Thank you for that. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the fastest way?
The fastest way is to call me, but I'm not giving my phone number. But the best way, I think, if they like what I say, I would say Instagram, because I post all my thoughts just on Instagram.
And people who want to get in touch with you, let's say for a meeting or for
my website, there's all my contact details.
Okay.
alexanderdeheijer.com. Or LinkedIn. People can find me there as well. They can find my book. Unfortunately, it's only on Amazon yet.
Can you put it in the screen for people who want to know?
It's nothing you don't already know. It's actually my page, my Instagram page. There's all these quotes in it. It's just made to make people think. It's not going to tell you anything new, but it may trigger you thinking. It's on Amazon. If you're in the Netherlands, the best way is to get it from Amazon.de, the German version, because the Dutch one is not up and running yet. But it's, I think, free delivery, and it's within a couple of days. But
okay. Yeah. Thanks, Alexander.
You're welcome.
And, we're going to take a little break and then do another talk in Dutch.
In Dutch,
for people who are
exactly the same one, right?
Yeah, exactly. And for our Dutch viewers, I would like to recommend also to type in Alexander's name on iTunes or SoundCloud, because you can find some great talks you did with other podcasts. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, man. Thanks for the invite.